don't gotta do it if you don't want to. You don't gotta do it if you don't want to. It's just a suggestion. Come on.
All right. Cheers. Welcome back to the conversation. I, as always, am Psych, and here joining me today is Letter K, and we're going to be continuing our conversation on relationships. Where do relationships come to an end? Where do they meet their demise, and why?
Yeah.
How? I was thinking about relationships in our country, the Western world, and the question I had today, because I know it gets tossed around a lot, something like 40 to 50. I mean, I don't know the exact number, but somewhere between 40 to 50% of marriages end in divorce.
I got those numbers.
You do? You got them too? You got the exact ones? Okay.
No, my numbers are totally different than yours, but I've got the real numbers.
Okay, we want the real numbers, people. Only the real numbers coming to you out of the press by Letter K.
So, according to the CDC's National Center for Health Statistics, and they keep track of everything for health reasons, apparently. Right now, we're seeing a significant decline in divorce rates. It's currently sitting at around 39%.
A decline right now in divorce rates.
Yes,
it's surprising.
I don't think so. I think that based on what we have learned over the last couple of episodes, I would say that it makes sense that divorce rates are declining. The whole thing that you're talking about, the whole 50% divorce rate. So I found where that's from too.
Okay.
So divorce rates in the United States peaked in 1981 at just over 50%, and that became the cultural lexicon for divorce rates in the U.S.
Yes, it was basically like a coin flip at that time.
Yeah.
I remember growing up, and people were talking about that. People in college, people in high school. Why even bother getting divorced if it's just a 50-50 shot that this thing's going to work out?
And statistically, so statistics are weird, right?
Bother getting married, I should say.
Yeah, yes.
Strike that. Reverse it.
Yeah. So statistics are kind of weird. So when you talk about a 50% divorce rate, you're talking about 5 people getting divorced a year per 1,000 marriages. So that over the course of a normal marriage, half of those 1,000 marriages end in divorce. That's where the 50% comes from. So the math, it's not like 50% of all divorces every year end in divorce. So, but yes, eventually, some last 6 months, some last 6 years, some last 40 years. But out of every 1,000 people in 1981, statistically, five marriages a year ended.
And I know this is a rough number.
Yeah.
Also something I heard many, many years ago. And I think that the data is somewhere in the range. We know the 50% thing fluctuates. It's not entirely accurate now. It's more, 40 to 50 or something to that effect. But every subsequent marriage, the second marriages end about 10%. There's about a 10% greater chance of that second marriage ending in divorce, and the third marriages tack on another 10% more likelihood that particular marriage ends in divorce. So if it was 50, just for sake of argument, if it were 50% of marriages end in divorce, well, if those two parties dissolve their relationship and move on, then they move on, and now if they remarry, then it's about 60. And if they get divorced and enter a third marriage, then it's about a 70% chance.
So what's the definition of insanity, right?
Yes. And I've always thought that it's because these people who haven't solved whatever problems that they had, there were existing problems that they needed to navigate through, all having to do with relationships and interpersonal communication and so on and so forth, are now taking those issues to the next relationship, and it just recycles.
And I mean, I know many people, and you probably do as well, who seem to keep getting into the same relationship, like over and over. Like they haven't seen enough in themselves to grow beyond attracting and being attracted to the same person time and again. And then, of course, they do realize sooner, and so the cycle perpetuates.
I have heard it put that people, and I don't know if this is absolutely true and can be proven in any way, but I have heard that people tend to attract who they are. So there's a lot of people have heard opposites attract. And I think opposites in certain ways, there's certain traits where you would attract the opposite. And I think that's it kind of steeped inside of us where, okay, I'm lacking this and I need somebody to help bolster this particular weakness of mine for survival. And so I'm gonna find that person, and that person, I'm gonna make that person my mate. But if you're not getting, people are kind of matching with people who they view are on their level, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And that just goes to what you were just saying about they keep finding the same sorts of people to have those relationships with.
Maybe they'll be different this time. Definition of insanity. Mm-hmm. So, according to the Journal of Social and Personal Relationships, they did a survey. Most common reasons for divorce. Guesses? Top four.
Top four, finances.
Finances, okay. That's your number one?
I would put that number 1 or 2.
Okay.
I would probably say one is infidelity.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I would say one would have to do with raising a family, child rearing, either the inability to have children or the differences involving how to raise those children. If there's existing children coming into the relationship with stepchildren or a blended family, so to speak. Just, people not being on the same page about how to raise a family.
Okay. You got one more.
4. I would say, and this sounds pretty bad. I hope this is not on the list, but I think maybe some sort of tragic accident or some sort of travesty that completely changes the other person. Maybe that your spouse gets cancer, terminal cancer, or maybe they're in a car accident and they're a quadriplegic or something like that. And I think
that the word tragedy immediately makes it not going to be on the list, because if something was so common that it made high percentage statistics, it wouldn't be a tragedy; it'd be a normal occurrence.
Perceived tragedy? Is that on the list?
So your top 4, according to a survey done by the Journal of Social and Personal Relationships, lack of communication is number 1. 41% of people say they ended their relationship because of lack of communication.
Okay.
Number 2 is infidelity at 28%. So communication already is a huge gap between the number 2 and number 1. Communication, we talked about that last time. Communication is huge. Number 3, lack of intimacy, which I don't know. I think that infidelity and lack of intimacy is 6 of one, half dozen of the other, because I think one creates the other. It's like a chicken and the egg.
Well, also communication. If you're not communicating with your spouse, well, then you're probably not finding those intimate moments, and then that
and then the 4th one at 11% is financial stress. Okay. And I think you're right. I think we could put these together and create kind of a divorce Venn diagram, and they would bleed into each other, but that's what they're saying.
Do you happen to know how many first marriages end in divorce? Did that come up?
I'll ask that question, but you have that statistic.
It was quite similar to, I put it in the chat GPT. And for first marriages, the divorce rate tends to be slightly lower than the overall divorce rate, which includes second and subsequent marriages, which that was what I learned as I was growing up, that, hey, if you get a second marriage, less of a shot. Third marriage, even less of a shot. Mm-hmm. If you get married a 4th time, either you're fortunate or lucky or stupid.
At that point, you're collecting divorces.
Yes, you're just racking them up. Yeah. But it spit out an answer which I more or less assumed would be true, that first marriages, if those two people have not experienced marriage before, and the first one that they've ever encountered, other than maybe their parents growing up, or from the outside looking in, seeing other people model healthy relationships and healthy marriages, I think it would be much lower. And the whole overall divorce rate is a result of all of those other people failing at second, third, fourth, fifth marriages.
Yeah, of course. So we're let's deep dive into this. But first, so
this is not vodka.
No. I'm personally right now, I'm doing a health challenge, the Rod Life Challenge that we sponsor on the ConverSAYtion Health Discord. So, while I bring up my video that I want to share, give it another perspective. Tell us what's going on here.
Yes, this bottle is brought to you by SodaStream. SodaStream is a wonderful company that allows you to make your own bubbly, sparkling, fizzy water at home. Actually, I don't know if the cost is
it's a considerable expense.
Nominal.
So, I love sparkling waters. I drink like 2 cases a week, but I do like the supermarket ones, like the Bubblies, Waterloo, LaCroix. Thank you.
Let's top you off here.
And this here, my first experience with the SodaStream fuzzy water, it's kind of amazing. But yeah, it's a little spendy.
But for your health, for your health, you too can hydrate daily with bubbles.
So for the next couple of episodes, not drinking alcohol. It's part of the Rod Life Challenge. But NSYC was nice enough to accommodate and produce a sparkling water solution.
SodaStream, if you're interested, please reach out and sponsor it.
Eventually, someone's going to call you. Yeah, probably be the pen people. So here's the perspective. This gentleman's a lawyer. He was on the Matt Walsh show, which is on Daily Wire, and it's about a minute long. But I think this will give us an interesting place to start discussing this.
I think fundamentally marriages end because of disconnection. I think we fall in love very fast. Like, love is an emotion and love is a verb. It's an action. So like the emotion of love, you feel very quickly. You feel attraction. You like this person. Everything they say is funny. They brush past you and it sends a tingle through you. Like, we've all been there. But that's not a real foundation to build something on, And if it causes you to stop seeing this person clearly and talking about important things like shared values, shared upbringing, like what is our worldview and what was it put together by? And, what are our thoughts about faith or what the goal of life is or the meaning of life is? We don't have some commonality towards that. So I think what really happens is we fall out of love the way we go bankrupt, which is very slowly and then all at once.
Thoughts?
Yeah, interesting. I think with any relationship and with any marriage, you need to have that foundation, right? And if that foundation doesn't have anything connected, if the structure of the house is not attached to the foundation, if
slips right off into the street.
if you're trying to mix everything together to form your concrete foundation and it's not solidifying, then yes, there can be some areas where people start to fall apart. I don't know about the saying falling out of love. I'm not precisely sure what that means to some people or even to most people. But if you aren't working to build a connection with somebody, and he mentioned faith, he mentioned common interests. I think faith is a huge one, because if you're in a completely different religion or something polar opposite, if those values, beliefs, and morals are in opposition to the person that you're in that relationship with, obviously.
A lot of religions believe that every other religion is the devil in disguise. So yes.
Which is why most religions are more than happy if you find somebody who is in the same religion, who goes to the same church, who adopts the same faith.
And we talked about that last episode about maintaining relationships and how people find lifelong partners, and a common ground of ideologies and belief structure was a huge part of that. Number four, number four in the top 5 reasons men file for divorce: falling out of love, and describes it as a feeling like the relationship has run its course. It's kind of vague, but I don't know.
That's men filing for divorce?
Yeah, men, and they're I can talk to the different reasons. But yeah, one of the top 5 was men say they've fallen out of love, that the relationship has run its course, and it might just be a pragmatic take on something that they don't want to be overly emotional about, and men tend to lean towards the physical in a relationship. So we're taught to kind of bury our emotions as men. So I think that falling out of love is kind of a catch-all way of saying I don't want to talk about it.
This is why women talk much about someone being emotionally unavailable.
Yeah.
So you mentioned men filing for divorce. Do you know who files for divorce the most?
So according to the American Sociological Association, women initiate 69% of divorces. It's dominantly women. I actually thought it was going to be a lot higher. We'd done that piece on the gender swapping, and men get kind of rooted into a relationship as it progresses. So I thought that it was going to be much bigger, much higher. But yes, women statistically, their main reasons are mostly emotional. I mean, physical abuse is on here, but it's also tied to just abuse. So emotional abuse is also a part of that, and emotional dissatisfaction is the number one. Most women cite emotional neglect or lack of emotional support as the key reason they apply for divorce. The man's not emotionally available, and then both men and women, infidelity is high on the list, but for different reasons. For a woman, it's the perception of the loss of an emotional bond. Has to do with being cheated on. For a man, it's the physical act more than likely that causes that to be the reason for divorce. It's a stab to the manhood. She went and banged some other dude, and I can't take it. It's an emotional response, but again, we're not wired to be overly emotional. So I just fell out of love.
So you asked me a question where I had to give the top 4 answers. I'm going to do the same for you. All right. Which race or ethnicity from first to
I get the clickbait question. Thanks.
This will be an excellent short. You'll see this on TikTok later.
Okay, so
all right.
Top 4.
Top 4. Which race or ethnicity divorce at the highest rate, and then work your way down from there.
And this is in the U.S.?
Top 4, yes.
In the U.S. Okay. I would say that the number 1 is white people, Caucasians, simply because they have a higher rate of people in the U.S. I would say number 2 is going to be something in the Asian world, like if Chinese or Filipino or something. I think that as these cultures that where divorce is not a thing, as they come to America, they're like, oh, I've got rights, screw this guy, that kind of stuff. And then I think it's African Americans, and then Hispanics.
Okay, you got them all, just in a different order.
In the wrong order.
Yes. So blacks or African American couples have the highest divorce rate. This is according to the U.S. Census Bureau, followed by whites or Caucasians, and then third, Hispanics and Latinos, and then fourth on that list is Asians. Asians typically are together the longest. They have the strongest nuclear family.
And I think it comes from the cultural background, because there are a lot of cultures where divorce is just flat out illegal.
Sure. And
it's rooted into religion and those kinds of belief structures. So cultures that have a larger percentage or concentration of traditional values, of like old world values, have lower divorce rates because You're just not allowed to do that. And now they come to America where everything's free, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of sexuality. All these things are all free here. And you're like, wait a minute, I don't need to stay in this abusive relationship because my religion or because my culture says that I have to. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No, there's entitlements. Mm-hmm. There's all sorts of money and programs available should a single parent choose to leave their spouse and become a single parent and start to rear their children without the aid of their partner. And so before that, marriages stayed together more for utility. I need you. I can't get to the other side of life successfully without the support of another person, without the support of their income, without the support of their, just someone else being there to share life with. And as soon as some of these other entitlements came about and other things that people could take advantage of and benefit from, then people became a little bit more free and a little bit more
so you're saying like
able.
I think I can't leave this person because I'm going to be okay. Mm-hmm. But whereas before, say in the 50s or 60s, the woman was kind of humped. She was in a nuclear family with 2 kids, had no job, no prospects, high school education, and she was tied to the man. And if she made the wrong decision in a life partner, mm-hmm. what was her solution? Push him in the wood chipper. That was kind of the only thing that she could do. So, yeah, and now everyone has to have a damn job. So we are in a place where people are like, I can probably make this happen on my own, especially if I've got these entitlements that guy Syke was talking about in his podcast, like child support and alimony. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's interesting how there's so many differences between the states as far as how alimony works and how child support works. And I know many people have their own ideas about what's fair and what's just. And, there's so many billionaires in the world and many of them have been divorced. And is your ex-wife, who was the one that initiated the divorce, deserving of absolutely half of everything that your empire has amassed? Is that right or fair? I don't know. I think more. I would take it more on a case by case basis. I think that's a bigger or larger argument. But I know I was asking ChatGPT to pretty much confirm one of my suspicions when it came to income and relationships ending. And basically, the more money people have, the more likely they are to survive. Their marriage is more likely to survive. Their relationship stays together. And the top 4 reasons are financial stability. Their education levels are a little bit higher, access to resources. And in many cases, they delay marriage until later, where they kind of know themselves and what they want, and they have their priorities in order, and then they attach themselves to somebody like-minded who they can share life with.
Yeah, and I think that people getting married later in life is a big part of this decline. I also think that a big part of it, especially here in California, there was no fault divorce is a thing, right? Mm-hmm. You can just go into the courthouse and be like, you know what, this didn't work out. We're both going to sign it. We're going to wait the 180 days and then just walk away. Happened in California passed that law first in 1969. I think that has a lot to do with the late 70s, early 80s being the peak of divorces. Mm-hmm. Making it easier. But the whole thing about, it's funny to me that financial security and stability is one of the highest reasons to stay together, but is much lower down the list for reason for divorce.
Well, I don't think it's one of the highest reasons to stay together, so to speak. It just kind of alleviates all of the other problems.
Yeah.
Like life doesn't seem to bombard you as much if you have the means
There's
to
less
navigate.
stress.
Yes,
Yeah.
stress is a huge one. If your bank account won't get you to the end of the month, and you've got kids, and only one of you is working, and only maybe one person does the majority of the spending and one person is and I'm the classic spender in my relationship, and my
You're
wife is
super
more
consumer.
I am a super consumer. I like everything that I like and I want it right now. But be that as it may, my wife is more of the saver. She's relatively simple when it comes to things that she
Frugal and content.
cares to. Yes, she's more content. She doesn't bother herself to go out and seek out things that she doesn't need at the time. And I'm kind of like the polar opposite. Fortunately, we have enough money to fuel my
to fuel. So let me ask
spending habits.
Let me ask you this: you have enough money to fuel your spending habits. Do you think that things would be different if you were both like you?
If we were both like me, would I marry me? Oh, I don't know.
I'm pretty awesome.
I think.
Good question.
I think I would attempt to find a way, I suppose. It would make things more difficult.
Yeah. So
There would have to be compromises.
yes, compromises definitely. So, and you would be able to get through financial stress together, which is a low percentage of common divorce reasons, if you communicated about those issues.
Sure. The communication thing, how do you think they measure communication?
So I'll give you an example. Me and my wife don't really talk too much, but we're in sync. We click. So we do. It's not like we don't talk, but we don't engage. We don't argue. We don't engage in like these big discussions about where our future's headed. We've got it kind of sorted out. We're on autopilot, and it's working out great. I have a friend who is in the exact opposite, and they're in a long-term relationship, and they find out that the person that they're with is keeping things from them, and it's financial, or it's relationship wise, and it's not just one thing. It's a personal culture of not communicating things that maybe your spouse should know about you, that that they always kept to themselves. And so when these things come out, there's a perception of what's the word? There's a betrayal in that why am I just finding out about this now? Mm-hmm. We've been married for 7 years. We dated for 2 years before that. This is the first time hearing about this.
And I agree with all of that. And I completely understand that. What my question is, if communication is off the top of the list, how are we coming to find out as a culture that communication is indeed the top of the list? Is it self-reports? Is it some sort of a poll or a survey? Is it, I know therapy sessions are confidential, so I mean that's off limits. If you go to seek out a medical professional to battle something like mental health, if for some reason you're feeling mentally abused or emotionally abused in your relationship, all of that information would be presumably off the books and held confidential. So how are we finding out that it's the top, or is it more of an assumption based on anecdotal stories?
My statistics come specifically from a survey.
Okay.
And I will say this. I will say that surveys are predominantly filled out by women. I'll ask ChatGPT to confirm that, so I don't look like an ass. But women fill out surveys, and so lack of communication being in step with the highest reasons why women file for divorce makes sense. So that might be the answer to your question.
Okay. And then what communication are the women typically seeking? I would imagine that's quality time involving conversation, more or less. we know there's all sorts of forms of communication. You've got body language, and you can definitely speak over the phone, but even though you're not in person, to share facial expressions, although we do have solutions for that now with things like FaceTime and video calls and that sort of thing. There's all sorts of nonverbal cues and forms of language that fit in there. So I would imagine that women are prioritizing that quality time. You in the room with me, I see you, you see me, I can look into your eyes, I can see your face, and talk to me, and I'll talk to you, and we'll share.
Yeah. So participation rates in surveys, predominantly women, 65%. So whew.
The surveys are filled out by 65% women? Is that what you said?
That's
okay.
Yeah. So I'm glad I dodged that string of hateful comments. But yes, emotional dissatisfaction, lack of equality and personal growth. And these are all tied to communication. And, so like if you're feeling unfulfilled and you want to do more, you've got to communicate that to your significant other. Mm-hmm. But if you're not, you're keeping it to yourself, or the perception is they're not listening. They are not making themselves available to hear about your needs. The divide grows. So I think that you're onto something with that aspect of why communication is such a big part of the divorce rates.
And I think that's where therapy, marriage counseling,
forced to communicate.
Well, I think both parties might assume that they are the party that's communicating, and not realizing that the other person isn't receiving those messages in the way that they're intending them.
We're the hero of our own story. And so if we're keeping our internal dialogue to ourselves, of course we're gonna benefit from the survey of how things look. Mm-hmm. Of course. But so yeah, I think that without knowing specifically, and I've heard a couple of anecdotal things from people here and there, I think that first therapy session is always an uncomfortable eye opener for people, because it's that first opportunity for whoever doesn't feel like they're being listened to be like, I'm not being listened to. Yeah. And so all these things come out really quick. And I'd be interested to see what it's like how many couples go to therapy, like they agree to go to therapy, and they only go to 1 or 2 visits, and what stops them from continuing if it's just a discomfort level. Like something, if you're emotionally closed off, and suddenly you're like, hey, only way this marriage is going to work is if you open up. That might be a line in the sand.
Sure. No, absolutely. Going to a counseling session with the intent to lay everything on the table and examine your relationship with your spouse. If someone were to truly do that and embrace that process, and if they haven't been communicating before, or they have been communicating, but not in a fashion that is received by their significant other, then it might be a little too much. It might be just overwhelming. They might feel, your partner might feel that they're being thrown under the bus, and now we've got a third party in the room. Yeah. And okay, because we have this third party here, now you feel like you're empowered and you have permission to just kind of throw all of this up at me. And why didn't you say any of this before? And then you start to think, well, I was there. You had opportunity. If you felt this way, we could have changed. We could have fixed this. We could have altered our course.
And maybe that's a part of it. Maybe so. Like I said, my wife and I don't feel the need to communicate on a super serious level all the time. Maybe the problem is people don't know how to communicate with their significant other. Like, how do I present this? Because we do have that kind of a problem occasionally. We're we're both kind of quiet introverts. So how do I communicate this to my significant other? Maybe that's a big issue. Like, things tend to fester because if you're an introvert, keep things to yourself. And you can convince yourself rather easily, oh, maybe it's not that big of a deal. I don't really need to tell them that. And you don't realize that I don't really need to tell them that turns into, what the fuck is his problem? 6 months, a year down the road. Mm-hmm. But it all goes back to communication. I think that we need to normalize talking to each other. It's in the supermarket industry, there was a management function technique called see something, say something. I think that we need to normalize, hey, this may not be a big deal, but before it gets bigger, I'm going to tell you about it. Mm-hmm. I think that
I'm willing to hurt your feelings now to preserve our relationship later.
Yes.
I have a theory. I have an idea, but I want to ask what you think. How many marriages do you think are saved by marriage and family counseling?
I have no concept of how that would look. How many couples seek marriage counseling? I know in California, for a while, they wanted to make it a rule, a law that you had to seek counseling before you applied for divorce.
Did you go to marriage counseling before you and your wife got together? Did you ever?
No, that was a thing too, right? Like you had before you get married.
Yeah, and my wife and I, we did. We went to one session. It was a pastor at our church.
Was it a requirement, or
it wasn't a requirement? Yeah. It was something we opted to do. No, it was optional. It wasn't mandated. It wasn't like we're not going to give you a marriage license if you don't jump through this hoop. No, but I think. If I had to guess, I think if a marriage or a relationship veers off course enough to the point where counseling, marriage and family therapy is sought out, I think that relationship is on the brink and probably heading in that way anyway, probably heading and going to end in divorce anyway, and maybe the counseling prior to that decision is maybe an opportunity for one or both parties to kind of clear their conscience. Yeah. We gave it one last go. This was our last and final attempt, last ditch effort. We've got a professional in the room. They're supposed to know everything. So let's try this. But I would say usually one person in the therapy session wants to be there more than the other.
Yeah. I think that marriage counseling is something that is popular with people who are already in some form of counseling. Like I'm talking to my personal therapist about all of this. We should have a group session with my husband. Maybe not with the same doctor, but or my wife. And so yes, somebody is always more interested. And it could be the person who is trying harder to save the relationship, or it could be the person, like you said, who's looking for the excuse to say, well, I did everything I could, but knowing this is just not going to happen. Because, what does it take for successful marriage counseling to occur where you're going to go in, take your ego out of it, and get into a headspace where I'm going to hear all these things for the first time and not take it personal? Yeah, I think that's going to be tough.
It would be. You have to completely remove yourself. You have to become selfless, so to speak. You have to almost put yourself at, how can I serve? How can I serve my part? And I think if both people are of the mindset, I'm going to try to outserve them. Mm-hmm. And they're going to go, no, I'm going to try to outserve you. What can I do for you? And a lot of people are like, well, I put in my 50% and they're putting their 50%. Now we have 100% of the marriage. More recently, I've heard, no, you have to bring your 100% every day. You put in that 100% and they're going to put in their 100%. And you're going to do that the next day and repeatedly and consistently. And that's how the marriages and the relationships that last over time make it happen.
Yeah. So marriage is 200% effort.
Yes. You need full 200.
Yes.
It doesn't survive on 188.
And definitely not on a flat 100%. It's not good enough for sure. Okay. So this is probably a good place for the end of relationships. Hopefully if people found value in this, hopefully your marriage ends in death. That's the goal.
That sounds terrible.
So good though. But
till death do us part.
but if not, I think we definitely talked to some key elements today. Next episode, we'll do conclusions. I'd really like to hear your overarching thoughts on relationships in general.
I have them.
The good, the bad, and the ugly.
I'm ready.
So excited for that.
So much ugly.
Yeah.
So much
ugly.
Yes.
Yes. So it's going to be the psych show next time because I don't have as much to say about that. I do have some insights, but I really want to hear psych talk about just unload on the concept of relationships.
How much time do we have?
We have about 40 minutes, as always.
Okay, I'll talk fast.
Yeah. It's going to be like the Gilmore Boys next episode. So come back for that. Thank you for joining us. This was amazing. Sorry, bro.
Oh, it's so good.